Welcome to our SHA Hospitality Leadership Summit. My name is Leora Lanz. I am the chair of our graduate program here at SHA, the School of Hospitality Administration, and I am the chair of our Leadership Summit, this year taking the format via Zoom so that we can all enjoy the program together. And rather than 2 days in person, we are 2 hours on Zoom with probably as much inspiration as we would have had in 2 days. So we're really excited about our program and very happy to welcome you today. Let me just share for a moment, our Leadership Summit was actually conceived a couple of years ago, originally as the 5th gear shift, and it was just internal for our students here in our school. And it rapidly grew and rose over time into something much bigger than we would have imagined, where the industry asked us, in Boston in particular, to bring it out so that they also could participate with us. It was a year ago now that we were going to have a 2-day event at the Hotel Commonwealth that did not happen because of the emergence of the pandemic. Ironically, at that time, the theme for our summit last year was hospitality leadership in a rapidly changing world. Little did we know what would be ahead of us in 2020 and the early part of 2021. How pertinent that title has become. And we're probably going to talk about that even today. And while we have all suffered immeasurable losses and changes, personally, with family, how we handle school, society, I have to say, SHA, we have grown here at our school. And we're very, very proud of how we've stayed connected as a community and connected with our industry to ensure that our students have a learning curve to keep us innovative and thinking ahead because of what's going on now in particular. Our master's program, too, has grown. We have new concentrations. So here's my 1-minute plug for the master's program at SHA. We now have concentrations in innovation and entrepreneurship, revenue management and analytics, real estate and finance, digital marketing, and our newest concentrations in restaurant management and experiences and senior living. So if anyone has questions or is interested in learning more, please connect with us. We will happily share information. At the same time, we have bolstered our programs to celebrate this important milestone. We have brought to you terrific Dean's Distinguished Guest Lecture Series, and we also now prepare as a school for the 40th anniversary of our school. More events to come in the fall. Recently, we had Chef Douglas Williams of MEDA as our Dean's Distinguished Lecturer. And he came right out and said, hospitality never dies. And that's something that I would rephrase to, we live on. We are thankful that you're here with us today. We are extremely thankful for our very, very special guests, Peter Greenberg and Danny Meyer, who will be receiving our Icon Award shortly. With that note, I'm now going to pass it on to Dean Abneja, who's going to introduce our keynote speaker, Peter, and then also introduce Danny Meyer with our Icon Award. We will have time for Q&A afterwards for each gentleman. Welcome to our summit. Welcome, Dean Abneja.
Thank you, Professor Lanz. It's a pleasure to host Peter. It is an absolute delight to welcome Peter Greenberg, who is joining us from Istanbul. For the benefit of everyone here today, I'm going to share some highlights from his bio and his very impressive career. He is a multiple Emmy-winning investigative reporter and producer. Peter is America's most recognized, honored, and respected frontline travel news journalist. Known in the travel industry as the travel detective, he is the travel editor for everything CBS, appearing on multiple shows, CBS This Morning, CBS Evening News, and CBS Sunday Morning. And his national CBS Eye on Travel radio show is broadcast from a different location around the world each week. And as the consummate insider reporting the travel business's news, he hosts the public television show, The Travel Detective with Peter Greenberg. Travel Weekly has named Peter one of the most influential people in travel, along with Bill Marriott and Sir Richard Branson. He has been inducted into the US Travel Association Hall of Leaders for his contribution to the travel industry. He has received many honors. Documentary Emmy Award as part of the NBC News Dateline team for outstanding coverage of Miracle on the Hudson. He also won a National Emmy Award for Best Investigative Reporting for the ABC 2020 special for the orphan flight out of Vietnam, What Happened to the Children. And when he's not reporting all over the world, Peter is an active volunteer fireman in New York. Please welcome Peter Greenberg.
Dean, thank you so much. Leora, thank you for having me here. And it's an honor to share the virtual stage with everybody, including your award recipient, Danny Meyer. What I thought I'd do today is to try to get my arms around and help you get your arms around this brave new world of hospitality that we find ourselves in, beware of the law of unintended consequences, and talk about the desperate need for new leadership, a new definition of hospitality, and of course, a new definition of responsibility. We're in a situation right now through no plan of our own, but we have to be aware of it, where we're embracing technology, maybe at our own peril. We're all on Zoom today. We're on Zoom every day. And my worry is that technology is not only taking precedence over the conversation, in many cases, it has become the conversation. So I apologize for having this talk with you today on Zoom, which defeats the entire purpose of my argument, but I don't have a choice. So the bottom line here is, how do you move forward? How do you talk to your guests? How do you have a conversation and understand your guests if you don't talk to them? I'm going to start with this. Focus groups don't work. I hate focus groups. In fact, I think the people who run focus groups are delusional. I'll give you an example, which has a lot of pertinence to what we're doing right now. Let's go back to 9/11. We all know what happened. We all know where we were. We all know our thoughts at that moment. We all know how we reacted to it. And the travel industry, especially the airline industry, assembled a focus group. Did you really need a focus group after 9/11? They assembled a focus group and they asked them this one question about 5 days after 9/11. Get ready for this. Tell me if you can figure out what the answer was. Here was the question. Will you be traveling much the rest of this year? The answer, of course, is overwhelmingly no. But guess what they forgot to ask them? The most important question. It's the same question we have to ask now. Do you want to? What we wanted back then is what we want back now, with a little bit of additional aspect, which I'll talk about. We wanted our security blanket. We wanted our blankie. And the travel and hospitality industry was not prepared to give it back in 9/11. And they lost six months to a year in that recovery process. Now, today, we have the same needs, but it's a different kind of terrorism we're dealing with. It's the terrorism of unfairness, lack of transparency, and basically telling the truth, or the inability to tell the truth. So let's think about this. And many of you are part of this. Last year, in 2020, what were the number one and number two most complaints, the most number of complaints filed at the US Department of Transportation? Complaint number, and by the way, in record numbers. They've never seen numbers like this. Number one, the inability of travelers to get refunds on trips that were canceled through no fault of their own. That's from airlines, hotels, tour operators, you name it. And the number two, which gets back to the security blanket, the worthlessness of the insurance they bought, which they never had a chance to figure out not only what was covered, but most importantly, what wasn't covered. For those of you who still make your reservations online, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You can't complete a transaction today online without either opting in or out of the insurance. But nowhere on that page does it tell you what you're covered for. What's worse, they don't tell you what you're not covered for. And what people found out after the fact was that on page 95 of that insurance company website was a small paragraph that said, oh, by the way, we don't cover pandemics. They bought worthless insurance, right? They didn't get refunds from airlines that were, by the way, under a long-standing ironclad rule by the US Department of Transportation, which all of you should use from now on, that says If the airline cancels your flight, no, for whatever reason, not if you cancel the flight, but if the airline cancels the flight, you're entitled to a full refund back to your original form of payment, even if you bought a so-called non-refundable ticket. Today, a year after the pandemic, there are still $9 billion in refunds not coming back to travelers. Does anybody have a problem with that? I do. You do. Because as we're trying to get into a new sense of normalcy here, what lessons have we learned? And more importantly, what lessons have we applied? It's all about hospitality. It is. Remember, here goes back to the focus group. It's not what people are talking about. It's what people are thinking about. So what are people thinking about today? Well, first of all, we know about the pent-up demand to travel. We all want to go. It's in our cultural DNA. It's not a matter of when or if or whether we're going to travel. It's a matter of how. And what people are thinking about is, I can't wait to travel, but I don't want to go somewhere and get stuck and not be able to come home. That's what's keeping them. And that's what's hurting hotels, 34% of which right now are technically facing foreclosure. We all know about the restaurant business. Danny Meyer can certainly speak to that. 1,500 restaurants in New York City alone that have closed and may never reopen. That's just in New York. And people need to know what we were talking about more than a year ago. Travel and tourism, the hospitality business, is the largest industry in the world. It's 1 out of every 10 jobs. And before the pandemic, it was 1 out of every 5 new jobs. What was the unemployment figure for the travel and tourism industry and hospitality? The highest of any sector in the world. 65 million jobs affected, many of which may not be coming back. So what are we going to do? How are we going to get through this to embrace a new definition of hospitality that really works? Well, let's start with this. Through no plan of their own, again, beware the law of unintended consequences, the hospitality industry has been given a chance to do what? To do-over. It's a do-over. It's a reset. How great is that? We've had the time now to do it. So what are we going to do? Well, we know certain things, right? Hygiene and cleanliness, health protocols. We got that part. But on the physical level, it's the physical redesign of public areas that before we're embracing large social gatherings that by definition were meant to be shared. And then guest room design in hotels, right? That was my pet peeve before the pandemic. We have an opportunity now to deal with that, right? What have they done since the pandemic? Well, housekeeping no longer comes in your room. They removed all paper items. There are seals on the door that only you can break. I get all that. But let's go back to the basics. I'm absolutely convinced, and if any of you are hotel designers, I'm not going to apologize, but you know who you are. I'm convinced that nobody who ever designed a hotel room has ever stayed in one. I'm convinced of it. Think about this. The lighting in the room. We don't change our lifestyle when we change our location. I like light in my room. I want to be able to read, to think, to create. Don't trap me with mood lighting. It puts me in a bad mood. The carpet. Talk about cleanliness. Let's talk about the marble floor in the bathroom. Who designed that? We come out of the shower with soap on our feet. That's a fractured skull waiting to happen. For everybody here who travels with a lot of stuff, there's no space for it in the bathroom and there's no light for it in the bathroom, especially for my female friends who need to do makeup. It's just not there. But my biggest pet peeve, actually there are two, the TV remote control unit and the thermostat. This is basic common sense. Hospitality should not have to come with a manual. I don't understand TV remote control units at home. I don't understand them in the hotels. How about on-off channel volume? We're done. And for the thermostat, I remember pre-pandemic, I was putting in a new HVAC system in my house, and the contractor very excitedly showed me the thermostat that could do everything short of launch missiles at NASA. I couldn't understand it. I said, here's what I want you to do. Rip it off the wall. Go back and get the original Honeywell wheel. Remember that little wheel, that dial? On, off? What a concept. I can't spend 8 hours figuring out the thermostat when I'm only going to be spending about 9 hours in the hotel to begin with. So we have opportunities here to make those changes that are humane. They really are. They embrace a better concept and definition of hospitality. So there's that one. As it applies to restaurants, again, beware the law of unintended consequences, social distancing has allowed me finally to win my war against what I call the terrible twos. Anybody in the restaurant business know what I'm talking about? The two tops. In the past, you would go to a restaurant and you'd be 4 inches away from another customer, rubbing elbows with them at that two-top table, unable to hear yourself think and not wanting them to hear your conversation and definitely not wanting to hear theirs. Let's hear it for social distancing and the redesign of restaurants. I will pay a premium now to keep social distancing at restaurants. Charge me more. And that's where it gets down to a true definition of hospitality, that it's not the rate, it's the value. I will share a story with you about my other long-term #1 pet peeve, the mini bar. And what's even worse, the Darth Vader mini bar, those infrared mini bars that as you approach it go, step away from the Diet Coke, because you know it's $9. So here's the story. There was a hotel in London and they wanted to increase their room rate. And they were told by all their focus groups that if they did that, they'd no longer be competitive within their market sector. And somebody very smartly at the hotel said, wait a second, what's the biggest negative touch point at the hotel? And this is a hotel in London, which means most of their foreign guests who were coming after a long flight. What was the biggest negative touch point? What a surprise, the mini bar. So this executive went against everybody's advice, thankfully, and said, take all the mini bars, burn them, throw them out, replace them with actual real refrigerators. And what do you put in those refrigerators? Every soft drink, fruit juice, cookie, candy, non-alcoholic beverage, milk, make it free and increase the room rate $30 a night. I said, you can't do that. He said, we're doing it. Guess what happened? Occupancy went up 17% and nobody bitched about the rate. Because before that, they did that, everybody coming to that hotel was living in dread that if you looked at the Snickers bar long enough, you were going to eat it and it was going to cost you $9 and you would hate the hotel. Now, when people go to that hotel, they're dreaming of that chocolate chip cookie, knowing that they don't have to go to their wallet to eat it, when in fact, they did, but it was all part of a perceived value proposition. So we have to get the accountants out of the asylum if you want to have true hospitality. Again, and I'm sure Danny Meyer embraces this in everything he does. It's not the rate, it's the value. And what do hotels do? The exact same thing. The resort fee? How many people here get up in the morning excited about paying a resort fee? And what's even worse, they're charging it in city hotels. That's not a resort fee. That's basically not truth in advertising, and it's failure to disclose. In fact, a number of attorneys general, after the Federal Trade Commission went after the big hotel chains for years to get them to stop this practice of not fully disclosing these fees, now attorneys general have filed suit against the big chains, claiming that it's drip pricing and basically fraud. Marriott is actually going to court to defend their right to charge these fees. So let's be clear. I defend their right to charge these fees. Everybody should charge whatever fee they want. But here's the problem. I also champion our right for full disclosure and transparency. And they haven't done it. Why? Because they want to get your attention with a $149 rate and then tack on a $30 a night resort fee that you didn't see coming. If you're staying there 5 nights, it's $150 you didn't plan or budget for. Now, that engenders a lot of ill will. We have an opportunity now as an industry to turn that around. And we turn that around going back to the future. We all realize one important thing here. I think we should. The original playbooks that were used for the last 2 years, the algorithms, the projections, throw them out. They don't work anymore. The business models have failed. The pandemic has shown us that. In the airline business, it's changed the definition of airlines. American, United, and Delta, whether they like it or not, are now low-fare carriers. Why? Because their business model was basically structured on filling the front of the plane with high yield, high value business travelers. They're not there. They haven't been there in over a year. And under that original business model, if you could fill the front of the plane, the back could be empty, but you made money. Conversely, if you couldn't fill the front of the plane and you had so many people in the back of the plane that were sitting out on the wings, you still lost money. Well, there's nobody in the front of the plane. Do you know what the airfare was last week from New York to Los Angeles, nonstop on American Airlines? $92. Now, Did they fill the plane? They did not. Because here's where the travel industry and the hospitality industry has lost the plot. You cannot discount your way out of fear. It won't work. You got to give people their security blanket and then let them embrace the real value that you're delivering. And so they haven't done that. Now, when the travel business comes back, it will not be led by business travelers. It will not be led by long-haul international travel. It's already starting to happen. It's going to be domestic travel within the 48 continental United States. It's going to come back explosively, not to 2019 levels, but you'll see it. You already started seeing the TSA figures as of 2 weeks ago, where they actually screened 1.3 million passengers, the most number they've done since February of 2020. So what do we have here? We have the emergence of other airlines basically flooding the zone, understanding the market, understanding what the market wants. Who are they? Frontier, Spirit, Allegiant, Sun Country, and Southwest. Let me give you an example. Prior to the pandemic, how many routes did Southwest Airlines announce every year that were new routes? Anybody want to guess? It was less than 1. The average was 0.5. They didn't add a lot of new routes. They didn't have to. Southwest Airlines has now announced 18 new routes in the middle of the pandemic. Frontier, 19 new routes. Sun Country, 16 new. We're talking like 45 new routes. And where are these new routes going? What cities did they pick? Was it New York, Chicago, and LA? Business capitals? No. Myrtle Beach, Eugene, Oregon, Bozeman, Montana. Get the picture? Leisure destinations. People right now want to go anywhere than big cities. They want to, because they're not business travelers. They just want to go anywhere. Look what's happening with the WFA symptom that we have, right? Work from anywhere. We've changed our work styles. We've changed our lifestyles. Are we going to go back? What's going to get us to go back? I miss hotels. I miss restaurants. I miss large social gatherings that can be shared. But we're not going to get there if we don't fix the basics and give people their security blanket. It's basically part of hospitality. But in the airline business, here's the problem. Before the pandemic, we had a number of airlines that embraced the concept that we were living in the home of the brave and the land of the fee. They were making more money from fees than from running the airline. I mean, everything short of breathing, you had to go to your wallet. And they thought this was a great idea. Well, guess what happened during the pandemic? With nobody flying, they couldn't charge change fees because nobody's buying tickets in the first place. So United Airlines finally had to make the decision, we're getting rid of change fees permanently. That was their word, not mine. They said permanently. Now, if history is any indication, I'm still a little worried about that because 2 weeks from now, they might call it a Murray and your name is, and you have a snowmobile fee and it's the same fee. But they said they were permanently getting rid of change fees, which in many cases, when you change your ticket, wiped out the value of your original ticket to begin with. So now, again, we've been given an opportunity to actually roll the dice, make a reservation, go somewhere if we behave responsibly, and not lose the value of our ticket if the flight gets canceled or we have to change. That's the way it should be. That's the way it should be. But the problem is we think of fees. The accountants are still running the asylum. This goes against the basic definition of hospitality. I mean, for the airlines, it's not about bringing back furloughed people. That's great. For the hotels, it's not about bringing back furloughed staff. But you have to get back in the conversation. What were the airlines doing pre-pandemic? Replacing people, as they had tridded them out, with kiosks. Now, here's my argument. If you're flying on a $59 ticket on Southwest Airlines for the rest of your life every Monday from New York to Chicago, go make love to the kiosk. But most of us don't do that. We really want to have a conversation. We want to talk to somebody. The true definition of great hospitality is when you have options. And you get to discuss those options with who? Another human being. You learn from them, they learn from you. And as the airlines can't redesign their floor plans. Restaurants can, right? Social distancing and airline cabins are mutually exclusive. We know that. And by the end of next month, Delta will no longer be blocking those middle seats. Here's a news bulletin. There's a reason why there's a middle seat on the plane, for the airline to sell them. So we all love the idea that nobody's going to sit next to us, but get over it. By the end of next month, there's going to be a 200-pound sumo wrestler next to you. Have a conversation. Just watch out for the armrest. Now, The leadership needs now. We have to put an end to the accountants running the asylum, as I said, and we have to basically embrace not what something's costing, but what something's worth. So we've talked about demanding transparency and full disclosure, but look, we know the hit that everybody's taken in the last year, whether it's me at CBS or you at a restaurant or even the School of Hospitality. It's a huge revenue loss that can't be recouped. But you cannot, even though there's a massive loss and you can't recoup it, it's not about one-dimensionally raising revenues. It's about regaining trust. And when you regain trust, the revenue will follow. Now, I've talked about how you do that. And the best thing is here. The hospitality industry, as I said before, has been given an unplanned opportunity for a reset. And this doesn't just happen in a vacuum. Everybody has a role to play. Restaurants, hotels, cruise lines, travel, tour operators, we're all connected, right? If there's no airlift, nobody's staying in a hotel. If there's no hotel, nobody's going to a restaurant. If there's no restaurants, other services suffer. It goes down the line. Look, when we talk about 1 of every 10 jobs is travel and tourism, there are 93 countries right now that they can't put food on their table because nobody's showing up. There are 54 countries in Africa, and they're going to be late to the game in vaccines. They're in big trouble, big trouble. And when you can't put food on your table, forget hospitality, governments become destabilized and you see civil unrest. It's as simple as that. You don't need to be a genius to connect those dots. So we need to have great government policy, which right now has been lacking, not just in this country, but in all other countries. Everybody's talking about a vaccine passport. I love it. I get the concept. The technology in this case is already there, and we'll be able to use it as a digital document, whether we go to an airport or a restaurant, the dry cleaner or a movie theater. I get it. But here's the problem. Nobody's in the conversation. Nobody's talking to each other. You have 45 separate entities developing a vaccine passport, none of which has been accredited, none of which is possible to be verified, none of it is possible to be updated. And what about forgery and fraud? And last but not least, in this age of digital problems, what about the data? Who's going to share it? Who's going to sell it? So we need a central clearinghouse. We need a central repository. We need a set of standards. When you go to an airport right now overseas to fly back to the United States, they ask for your passport. What do they do with it? They scan it through their machine, and it goes to 13 separate computers that you know nothing about. The National Crime Index computer, the US State Department no-fly list. It goes on so that they know who's getting on the plane before you get on the plane. They know your history. So the technology is there. But I'm in Turkey right now, and the only vaccines available here are made in China. Has the United States said they're going to recognize the Chinese vaccine on somebody's vaccine passport? No knows. I mean, nobody knows. So we have to move fast to do that. We're all talking about reopening borders and opening the doors and getting travel flowing again. So we go back to, a really great opportunity to have hospitality. We can't do that now without that central clearinghouse and that set of standards. And that's what I'm saying. Everybody has a role to play, but they need to get in the room. They need to have their own conversation and realize, as we said at the beginning of the pandemic, but nobody behaved that well, we're all in this together. When it comes to technology, this is the one time I'm going to allow technology to rule if we have the conversation, because I want that digital document like yesterday, but it does me no good. It does you no good if nobody recognizes it. And it only works on one airline or one hotel. And we have to have that happen pretty soon. And that's where leadership comes in. It's not just about one area of leadership. It's not just restaurant leadership or hotel leadership or cruise ship leadership. We haven't even talked about the cruise ships. Here's the irony of the cruise ships. And you heard it here from me first. The optics of the cruise ship industry, we all know what they are. It was a floating Petri ship. I'm never going to go on it again. You couldn't pay me to go on the ship. Really? We have a huge population of dedicated cruisers who can't wait to go back. Again, not only do they need their security blanket, the cruise lines need theirs. So what are you seeing right now? One after another, each cruise line is making a new rule that their crew mandatory has to be vaccinated. Their officers mandatory has to be vaccinated. Their passengers mandatory have to be vaccinated. So think of this. And the irony, when that happens and you have 100% compliance, the safest place to be will be on a cruise ship. How cool is that? But nobody's thinking in those terms yet because they haven't gotten their arms around whether or not they'll be able to take their mask off again. Getting vaccinated does not mean you've gotten liberated. You're going to be wearing your mask for another year. And for all those idiots who don't want to wear a mask, they have the right not to do it, but I have the right not to travel with them. And what I say to all of my audience is situational awareness is everything. If I go to a bar in Mexico and there are 300 moronic Americans there, no masks, 6 inches away from each other, drinking tequila, it's a 180 for me. We're done. So this is not political. This is practical. People will get it, but they need to know that the hospitality industry is 100% behind it. I don't know if the hospitality industry in Mississippi or Texas or Florida is behind it. Right now, I'm not inclined to go to any of those 3 states. I'm not. They're doing themselves a short-term infusion of cash and a long-term infusion of ill will. Again, set of standards, policy. So we're at an interesting sort of a threshold moment now in the travel industry, in the hospitality industry. The airlines are going to have to come to grips whether they're transporting people or they're in the human cargo business. Hotels have to figure out, can we return to really great old school values at 40% occupancy for a while? Can we do that? And if we can do that, word will travel fast that people had a great experience. And with 40% occupancy, you have no choice but be in the conversation. Why wouldn't you? Talk to your guests, show them. This is the one time where back of the house means everything. This is the one time where people want to know about the process and not the product. They want to know how their sheets got washed. They want to know how their dishes got cleaned. They want to know how their beds got made. They want to know what was done prior to they getting there and immediately after they left. That's their security blanket. Same thing in the restaurant business. So we have a great opportunity here. We shouldn't blow it because we're on that threshold moment with 2.5 million Americans being vaccinated every day, starting back in February. That means by April 30th, that's 70 million people. And President Biden just upped the number. He's going to say it's going to be vaccinated by May. I believe him. At that rate, it's just basic math. So it's an educational opportunity, it's an operational opportunity, and it's a philosophical opportunity to retrain your staff to get back in the conversation and to realize that if we want more stability in hospitality, we have to stay in that conversation. And together we get to move forward and not to this brave new world, but to actually embrace the brave old world. And when we do that, the true definition of hospitality will return. And when you have leaders like Danny Meyer and a number of other keynote people that I love and respect, you listen to them, you go forward with them, you learn by example, you get the accountants out of the room, and you realize this is not a revenue issue. This is a responsibility issue and a conversational issue. Stay in the conversation, we can have another conversation next year, and it'll be a much happier conversation. At that point, I'm going to turn it over to you if anybody has any questions, and please fix those mini bars.
Thank you so much, Peter. That was wonderful. I think your complaints about the industry have resonated pretty much with practically everyone listening. I had trouble getting a refund and I had to fight with my credit card company to get a refund. And I think everyone can tell you those horror stories. But I love your passion. I love the enthusiasm and the excitement you bring into this. And if I had the power today to magically to sort of put in a hospitality advocate in the United States with magical powers to change all regulations, you know where my vote is going, Peter.
But Dean, you don't need magical powers to do what I told you. You need a conversation with your elected representatives to let them know, connect the dots, follow the money, and they'll understand what's going on. I'll give you one other thought. Every DMO, right, destination marketing organization, their business model has fallen apart. Why? They were dependent for their budgets to promote their destinations on hotel occupancy taxes. If nobody was staying in hotels, they had no budget. So guess what? They're basically they're basically in coma. And remember, it's not about promoting anymore. It's about presenting, giving people logical choices and letting them know the process So they don't have to use magical powers to have somebody connect the dots. That's all I'm saying.
Right. Well, I mean, so we've heard you talk about all the grievances that a lot of us have with the industry. Can you also give us some examples of successful leadership at this time, companies or organizations or hotels or restaurants that are doing it right and in the right way, taking a consumer perspective and staking out a leadership role?
Well, you know what? Let's give a shout out, not just to the consumer perspective, but to their own employees. You know, if you don't communicate to your staff, you lose everybody. If you take a look at what Arne Sorensen, we miss him terribly, what Arne Sorensen did with Marriott and his staff, and talking to them and communicating with them and in an empathetic way and letting them know we're going to figure this out. If you take a look at what Danny Meyer did before the pandemic with his staff in terms of providing healthcare and in providing a different approach to the actual transaction of a meal. If you take a look at what the major corporations who understand that without their frontline staff, they don't have a corporation have done, then you won't have these consumer problems. You won't even have consumer grievances. What needs to be done now, and it's starting to happen at certain locations, is that you're now empowering your frontline employees to empathetically solve problems and not go by a manual that says no waivers, no favors. Opportunities for people to have that conversation. And the real heroes in this business, pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic, are the people who do what? They take care of things when something goes wrong. They fix it. And they respond immediately without any kind of corporate, mission statement. They just do it. And if you empower your people and trust them, I talked about regaining trust. This is the time to trust your people. They've been working really hard because they love their jobs. They need to know that you love them and that you're giving them the power to love their customers, their guests. And if you do that, the true definition of hospitality returns.
Thank you. We have seen all the gloom and doom with people stopping travel. And you said the front of the airplanes are not getting filled. People are not going on cruises anymore. Ed Fuller, the former president of Marriott International and our current advisory board member, has this question for you. How do you see the travel industry cascading back to 2017-18 numbers? Do you think travel restrictions are loosening? Are there certain parts of the world where it will take off, before other places?
Well, it's interesting. And hello to Ed, my old buddy. I think he's out in California today. But here's the deal. It's basically go back to the European Union rule banning American travelers because we weren't behaving very well. 32 European Union countries, as an example, said we couldn't go. But look what's happening now. They're not deciding when we can go as a unit. They're doing it individually now. So you have Greece saying they're going to reopen their borders on May 14th to anybody who's been vaccinated. You have the UK saying they're going to try to do that on May 17th. You would think that Ireland and Scotland would do the same, but they can't for the same reason that Canada can't. They don't have enough vaccines for their own people. So they're not about to let us show up. We need to ramp up the vaccine distribution on a global scale. We can't get involved in corporate politics here. We need to ramp it up as a United Nations effort. Because otherwise, if you think there's a disparity between the haves and the have-nots now, in terms of different countries, you haven't begun to see that when people start to travel. A lot of countries are going to be left at the gate. They don't have a choice. So it's all about the amount of vaccine we're disseminating, the development of rapid response reliable testing, where you can biometrically get an answer within 45 seconds to a minute as to whether you're positive or negative. And we'll get used to that the way we take our shoes off at the airport. And when that happens, that combination, that intersection, it will come back. Now, when will it come back? Different sectors, different times. Leisure travel will be back by next year. Long-haul international business travel, probably by July or August of next year. Meetings and conventions, probably 2023, because that's how they book them. They book them 2 to 3 years in advance. And you need to change corporate travel policies way before you ever book a convention. But remember, we need face-to-face. It's how we work. The one thing that'll do the crack in the dike and the dam will be this. You get one sales and marketing team from a Fortune 500 company that makes the bold decision, we're going back on the road to meet with our customers. For competitive reasons alone, the floodgates will open and everybody else will line up to do it because they don't want to be left out. That may happen before the end of this year.
Fantastic. So, Peter, I want to switch gears just a little bit. It's good, well enough for people to want to travel, and there are options available on airlines and cruises and so forth. United States has been a very, very attractive tourism destination for a lot of people around the world. And in the recent years, there has been this sentiment around the world that US is no longer welcoming visitors. I know we have seen in higher education, a lot of tourists prefer to skip the United States. So my question is, what responsibility do you think the federal government has to sort of erase that perception that is there in the world? Should we be doing it? Is our government doing it?
Well, our government hasn't been doing it. We know that. We have not been welcoming. And it's the welcome that makes the first impression. And look, how many, and by the way, this is not particular just to the United States. You land in many foreign countries and you'll see 45 immigration and customs booths, right? Passport control booths, of which 3 are manned. And you're standing in line for 8 hours. That's your welcome to that country. They give you a goodbye the same exact way. You're standing in line for 8 hours to get out of the country. When are we going to have an entrepreneurial spirit with customs and immigration that does not in any way jeopardize security, but gives people that welcome? About 8 months ago, I came back to Chicago and I was going through customs and the customs agent said, "Welcome home." And I went, "Marry me." I mean, it was like, I'd never had that before, right? I mean, it was either fruits or vegetables or step aside. The good news now is, again, the government has an opportunity to make very small fixes, but they're meaningful fixes. And they have to project that we are no longer, it's part of what the President Biden's executive orders have tried to do. We're no longer anti-Muslim. We're no longer anti-Europe. We're no longer anti-anybody that we think we don't like. Travel is the great equalizer. It opens more doors than it closes. It builds more bridges. I'm not going to start singing Kumbaya, but the point is, it is the most powerful tool for normalization of behavior that I've ever seen. Going back to even ping pong diplomacy with the Chinese, and that was 50 years ago. So we have an opportunity, but again, not magic time, Dean. It's getting on the phone with your elected representatives and say, please connect the dots and fix this, because they can follow the money. It only means more revenue. And you know what? That's what drives it all anyway.
Thank you. I think everyone listening is taking note of that. We need to get to our representatives. So I want to go back to, and you mentioned a lot of things about hotel design and the way they're operating. So I want to switch to a slightly different perspective here. And you know that over the last few years, in fact, a couple of decades, hotels have been shedding assets, and now they are primarily just selling their flags and their reservation system. And in the old days, I guess a flag was a symbol of quality. You can go anywhere and this flag and you live there. Now in the day of social media, you have so many comments and reviews on each hotel. So hotels are no longer stranger to me if I go to a new place. So what do you think of this idea that the hotels have shed all the assets and now they're, is this something that they're going to regret in the long run?
It is, and I'll tell you why. First of all, we have a misperception about hotels and brands. I could ask not anybody in this room, but anybody outside this room, hey, how many hotels does Marriott have? How many hotels does Hilton have? And their perception is that Hilton and Marriott own those hotels. They don't, right? It's a res system, and it's an opportunity, and it's a frequent stay program, right? And without dumping on any one hotel brand in particular, but I'll just give you one example, and I'll ask this question to everybody in the room. If I told you tomorrow that you were staying at the Sheraton in Cleveland, would you be excited? No, because the only reason why you might be staying at the Sheraton in Cleveland is because of their points, or because they were attached physically to a convention center where you had to be. So the bottom line is they've lost the plot, right? And it's just a res system. And where are the standards? So we really have to figure out, and by the way, at a meeting not too long ago, I asked this question: how many hotels are in the Marriott portfolio by brand? Does anybody know? And one person raised their hand. One. It was a room of 500 people. And I said, and who do you work for? Marriott. Okay. Tell me all the 32 brands. And he did. And he was very proud of himself. Then came the tougher question: differentiate them. Whoops. Couldn't do it. Could not do it. And there's our problem. Look, I'm not pointing any fingers, but we've gotten to the point of diminishing returns, right? Because it's not enough to just keep on opening a hotel in every corner and giving somebody the exclusive of a 4 Points and a JW Marriott and a Sheraton. You end up with 4 hotels on the same corner, right? Just different brands. That's just a real estate transaction with the big companies just trying to make money on fees. We have to get beyond that. And you know what? I think we've reached that critical juncture where the question that you raised will be answered in the next couple of months and years, where you're going to get down on the number of those brands because they can't support it, because they can't define it. And once that happens, people then truly become loyal to a brand because of the service and not the frequent stay points.
So we have one of questions from one of the guests attending today. How can developing countries become a leader in tourism and hospitality? Do they need to be technologically advanced, or can they achieve the same using available resources, just sort of highlighting the attractions that they have?
Well, I'm going to say something that most people might misinterpret, so I'm giving you that qualifier before I say it. Most developing countries I know, as a new president or prime minister or premier takes office and they're figuring out who's going to be in what cabinet, by the time they figure out who's going to be foreign minister and minister of commerce and industry and minister of labor, the last guy they pick or the last woman they pick is minister of tourism, who they just gave it to them because they had nothing else to give them. They had no expertise. They had no experience. They just gave it to them. And this is not the time to join the Learn While You Earn program. You need somebody who actually walks in knowing how it works. And that's one-on-one. And I wish they would understand that, because these are the very same countries, these developing countries, that are so dependent on their GDP for travel and tourism.
Peter, I think we have, I just have a couple of other quick questions that are coming on the chat as well. And you mentioned these fees, and you were pretty, unhappy with the hotels, with airline fees, and with airlines having eliminated these fees, and they're calling them permanent, which you said their language. Do you think these are actually permanent, or as soon as the planes start filling up, in some way or the other, they're going to bring back change fees? I saw a comment on the chat that, one person tried to change there and they got socked with a lot of fee on a 148 fare, $700 change fee. So even though they are saying them, they somehow still seem to be creeping back in.
You just asked a rhetorical question. Of course they're going to come back. We need to fight back. We need to fight back. And I'll be the first person on the front line doing that, because I think it's just wrong.
Peter, I have truly enjoyed speaking to you and getting to know your thoughts. And again, if I had the power to appoint a consumer advocate, that would be you. I'm at this point going to turn over to Professor Leora Lance, and she has some other set of questions that are being asked in the chat, as well as people who asked when they registered. So thank you, Peter, and I look forward to hearing more of your conversation.
You got it.
Peter, it's got to be weird to hear me called professor. I've known Peter since my Sheraton days, which is over 30 years ago, when all I heard from Peter was B-roll, Leora, get me good B-roll. So we go back and we've intertwined over the years. So it's a pleasure to have you here in this role. So thank you, Peter. We did have questions that folks had submitted upon registration that wanted to get to know you a little bit better. But truthfully, there have been so many questions coming to me in the last 10 minutes that I really want to get to the folks who are here to ask some more business related questions, really looking for your opinions. So let's go back for a moment. The US Department of Commerce, which is probably like a 4-person team, we're hearing from you, somebody's got to start the conversation. Who should start the conversation, Peter? Who should really be the person or the entity to take that role and get us started?
Well, it's interdisciplinary. It's the U.S. Department of Commerce. It's the U.S. Department of Transportation. It's the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I mean, everybody has a role to play here. It's not isolated by one department. They need to get into a room and say, okay, what roles do we play here in travel and tourism, and how can we make it better? How can we be more business friendly? How can we be more regulation friendly to the extent that it allows people to travel without fear? How can we be more security friendly, that we never jeopardize security in the process? And how do we be more transparent? So it's not just one government agency. Right. I mean, everybody has great intentions, but it's the execution that counts. And right now, I don't know of a single US government agency that's executing well. And that, by the way, doesn't reflect on the Biden administration. That reflects on the last 4 administrations. They don't understand the power of travel and tourism. They don't get it. They think it's like going to vacation in the Hamptons once a year, And it's clearly delusional.
We had a question, somebody asked, do you think in light of what's going on right now, will Airbnb occupancies go up? Will we see more going toward the hotels that have put in their clean stay programs or whatever? Where do you see that kind of future, or at least in the short term?
Yeah, and well, I'll give you one answer, which is in the WFA world that we're in. About 2.5 years ago, Marriott went out and amassed a portfolio of 16,000 vacation homes, 10,000 of which in the United States, called Homes and Villas by Marriott. They were in the mountains, in the desert, and in rivers and lakes and oceanfront. And they started about $200 a night. Many of them sleep up to 8 people. So when this happened, watch out. Either one extended family or 2 neighbor families literally moved out of the city. They were no longer on a commute. They were no longer spending money on gas. They were no longer eating out. The kids were learning from home. The parents were working from home. And the dollar figure went out to about $25 a night per person. What's their incentive for ever coming back? So right now, short term, there's a lesson there to be learned from city hotels and from Airbnb that you're going to have to educate your hosts to be able to provide that security blanket, right? Because the Marriott Homes and Villas, they are managed by Marriott. So that's their same health and cleanliness protocols. The same thing has to be done at the Airbnb level. I have not seen Airbnb yet tell me convincingly that they have a handle on this, because every host has always operated as an independent entity. That's like having, Uber telling me they know their driver by their first name. They don't. You got to figure out a different way to do this.
Gotcha. We also had someone ask a question about the future of spas and gyms and other similar amenities in hotels, particularly in resorts or anywhere, quite honestly. Where do you see that going beyond 2021?
I see it just being better organized, and I'll explain. What have the hotels done in the wake of the pandemic for their gyms? You call down as a guest and they give you the hour from 9 to 10. It's yours. Or they give you the hour from noon to 1. Here's the biggest irony about hotels. If you ask guests for their, here it comes back to focus groups again. So you say to guests, would you stay at a hotel that didn't have a pool, a gym, or a spa? Absolutely not. Now ask the hotel what the guest utilization is of that. Maybe 7%. So if you make the gym on a reservation basis, and I know that I've got it for myself for an hour, or with my family for an hour, that's even better. And I'm not crowding anybody else out. Same thing for the spa. I don't have a problem with any of that. It's going to come back. It's just going to be organized in a much more honest way.
Yeah, I think we're hearing that from the private club sector too. I think making those reservations and appointments to use the pool or the other amenities, I think that even kicked in as early as last summer. And I do have some friends who are GMs. I know one in particular in the Los Angeles area where they've done that by appointment and it seemed to work very, very well. We did have a number of folks. You talked about travel insurance, Peter. What advice do you have for those of us as consumers traveling about purchasing insurance?
It's very simple. And here it is. It doesn't have an exception on this one. Never, ever, did you hear me? Never, ever buy the travel insurance from the travel provider. I can't be more clear. So if you see that opt in or opt out on your screen when you're making an airline reservation, I wouldn't even buy that insurance anyway. But if you want to buy it, don't. Go to a travel agent or a travel advisor, have a conversation in which they can walk you through what's covered, what isn't covered. They get commissioned on it. Nobody's taking away anybody's income. They can have that conversation with you. Now, the marketplace does speak. A number of insurance companies now, because necessity being the mother of invention, are coming up with trip cancellation and interruption insurance that supposedly covers for pandemic. But once again, you got to read the language. Some of this language says it only covers you if your middle name is Murray and you have a snowmobile. This doesn't work. So have somebody else have a conversation with you, because insurance company policy language, whether you're buying home insurance, property insurance, or trip cancellation insurance, it's hieroglyphics. I need somebody to interpret it for me, and I can't do that online.
We're going to go to a different topic because I know with you, Peter, we can ask just about anything related to our business. Hybrid meetings for corporate events, for social events. Do you think that's going to stick? Do you think that's going to be around for a while? Do we need to be prepared for it? What are your thoughts on that? In the short term, it'll be around for a while until people come back from personally attending those meetings saying, you missed out. And then we'll be back. It's just, look, we need eye contact. Some of us are old enough to remember the quote unquote boom in teleconferencing. Remember that? It never flew.
teleconferencing like the Zoom call we're on now is great if you are the IBM parts department and you got to talk to the marketing department. For intra-company communication, it works. But if you're the IBM marketing department and you want to sell Leora a new computer, you better go see her. You better go see her. And we're going to get to that point in the next 6 months, slowly and then surely.
But to your point, as long as people can say there's a value to you being there in person. And so we're going to have to be even more effective about what we do with our meetings to make sure that there is a value on them.
I guarantee you, from a sales point of view, if there's a sales team of my competitor and they're meeting with you, I'm on the next plane.
Gotcha. We've got a couple minutes left before I turn it back over to Dean Abnasia, but over tourism, there was a piece in Travel Weekly just this morning. In a way, this year has been a chance to reset. So for destinations like New York or Venice or some of the other places where we have these visions of severe overcrowding, but how does a destination manage that? To be able to manage your tourism so that you still can benefit the locals, not overcrowd them. And how do you see us going forward in some of that?
Here's how you do it. I was talking to the Minister of Tourism of Greece, and their approach to it is make it a 12-month destination. Spread it out. I mean, you mentioned Venice. Every time I go to Venice, the bridge of sighs is the bridge of thighs. Oh my God. So the point is, and everybody's got their selfie stick. They should be banned. But the real problem here is we have to get rid of seasonality if we're going to get a handle on over-tourism. It's as simple as that. By the way, I'm not going to Paris in November for a tan. I'm not going to Paris in July for a tan. I'm going to Paris to go to Paris. So let's get real here and see how we can make that work.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shout out to my friends in Bermuda, because I know the tourism folks there who have been really working hard to try to make it sort of a work from home place for the year.
Absolutely.
Which speaking for work from home and the workation concept, how should hotels manage themselves? We're hearing little programs coming up here and there, but what do you think? Where's the opportunity for lodging for airlines with a work from home or the ability for workers to go anywhere now and work?
It gets back to how you redesign the rooms. If you can give me a work environment with enough space to put my laptop, which is bigger than my knee, and you give me enough electrical connections to actually do what I need to do, and you give me the access to high-speed internet that's truly high speed and not dwarfed by the 9-year-old in the next room doing Call of Duty, then, and you price it right. Again, it's not about the cost of the room. It's about the overall experience. If I'm going to stay at the hotel, give me the opportunity to eat well at the hotel reasonably, and all of a sudden your kitchen stays open. If you're going to give me the opportunity to stay at the hotel and work at the hotel, then all those other things we talked about the gym and the spa, it becomes real. And then the hotels need to do one other thing, which they've never done. Hotels and hotel general managers have always been trained in one way, and it's wrong. It's what are all the great things you can do at the hotel because you're at the hotel? No. What are all the great things you can do within a 50-mile radius of the hotel that we're going to enable you to do? That's what's going to keep me at the hotel. That's what they need to do now more than anything else.
So Peter, for a brand that says they cater to the business traveler, should they have a desk?
You know what? Yes.
Thank you.
But wait. They
for
can
the
have
students listening, pay attention.
Wait, they should not only have a desk, but learn from the pandemic. I don't want to see another tent card on my desk for the rest of my life.
On that great note, it's 11:30. Actually, I think we've so many takeaways as expected, and it's not about the rate, everybody. It's about the value, and I think that's something we all know, but we just have to keep reminding ourselves about.
Leora, if I can, before we say goodbye, if anybody else has any more questions for me, let me give you my email. I'm happy to answer them. It's peter@petergreenberg.com, and it's the most imaginative website there, but that's it, peter@petergreenberg.com. Please write away. I'll be happy to answer it, and I hope we can continue the conversation. And I'm pleased to share this stage with Danny Meyer. I mean, he's my idol.
Well, he's our icon today too, so thank you. And Peter, you are also our consumer travel icon, and thank you for sharing all of this insights. There were more questions pouring in. We just can't get to it, but thank you for your willingness to share your email, which we just posted. Much appreciated. Of course, you're happy to stay on. We welcome you to stay on, but we know you're in Istanbul filming for your PBS show, so we know that you've got somewhere to get to. But Peter, thank you.
And thank you, Dean.
Appreciate it, Peter.
Thank you.
And Dean Apnaja, I'm going to bring you back so that we can introduce our Icon Award winner. Thank you.
A couple of years ago, we decided as a school that we will honor one individual each year as icon of the industry. We did not make this decision lightly because this is a heavy title, which is matched by the weight of the award. An icon is someone who elevates the hospitality industry through their incredible accomplishments and contributions that extend well beyond anything that they have personally built. Most important, an icon is a person who embodies values and ideals that propel our society forward in a positive, fruitful, and hopeful direction. An icon creates a legacy through the places and ideas that they bring to life and the people they inspire. We need role models to inspire us, to make us a better version of ourselves, and most of all, to have the ambition that individually we can make a difference in this world and make this world a more hospitable place. Danny, you're an icon to us all. It is our honor to bestow the Icon Award on you. So I want to introduce Danny a little bit for our audience so they know who is Danny Meyer in case you still don't know. 1985, at the age of 27, Danny opened his first restaurant, Union Square Cafe, launching what would be a lifelong career in hospitality. 30 years later, Danny's Union Square Hospitality Group comprises some of the New York's most beloved and acclaimed restaurants, including the Gramercy Tavern, Modern, Maialino, and more. Danny also founded Shake Shack, the modern-day roadside burger restaurant, which became a public company in 2015. So under his leadership, USHG is renowned not only for its acclaimed restaurants, but also for its distinctive and celebrated culture of enlightened hospitality. The guiding principle of prioritizing employees first, that has driven its evolution from a small group of restaurants to a multifaceted hospitality organization. Danny's groundbreaking book, Setting the Table, a New York Times bestseller, articulates a set of signature business and life principles that translate to a wide range of industries. He's a celebrated speaker and educator. He has set industry standards in hiring practices, innovative leadership, and corporate responsibility, and addresses a wide range of audiences around the country. Danny has been generously recognized for his leadership, business achievements, and humanitarianism, including the 2017 Julia Child Award, Times 100 Most Influential People list. I can go on and spend a long time reading the list, but just want to mention that Danny and his restaurants and individuals have won an unprecedented 28 James Beard Awards. Welcome, Danny.
Thank you so much, Dean, and everybody from Boston University. This is a really, really big honor, and you've made me feel incredibly welcome. And to Peter Greenberg, I really, really enjoyed your presentation. And so much of what you said rings true to what we're thinking about as we recover in our industry right now. I wanted to share a few comments in accepting this amazing honor. And then I'm really looking forward to a conversation with Dean Apnaja and also I think with Leora after that. And hopefully some of you in the audience will have questions, which I'd be very glad to try to answer.
Thank you, Danny. Can I just interrupt for 1 second? We have a video which we want to show you. These are the thoughts of a few words from some of our alumni and friends. And right after that, we'll give you a chance to speak. But here is the video.
Well, nobody told me about that. And I'm just incredibly moved and grateful to each and every person who spoke up just now. And wow, you hit me hard on that one. So thank you very, very much. It feels good to know that I'm quite moved right now. A business that's about making people feel good, can do it for each other too. And you've done that for me in a very, very big way. I would like to share just a few of my observations about what this career, but also this last year has been like. And maybe I don't even need to say much, because I think that your students did an even better job than I could have. And it's very clear to me that you have at Boston University really created the type of soil that can grow the most amazing crops that will bear fruit in our industry for a long time. And I go back to my very, very early days. It's a story I've told many times, but as a political science major, at a time in the 1980s, when the hospitality career path was not one that as many people looked on as a viable career choice. I was absolutely certain that I would go into law, because that would make my family feel better. In fact, I had so much subliminated the notion of going into the restaurant business that I didn't even consider it as an option. And I'm just incredibly lucky that literally on the eve of taking my LSATs, I had an uncle who knocked some sense into my head. And really from that moment on, overcoming the concern about telling my parents that this career path that maybe they thought I should be on was not the one I was going to choose, I have spent all my years really trying to show that there is in fact nothing more valid and nothing more noble than being in a career that is about caring for people, and that you can actually do quite well at making the world a better place, one hospitality transaction at a time, beginning with the people who work in your company, and then your guests, the community in which you do business, your suppliers, and yes, your investors. We need all 5 of those stakeholders to be rooting for our success. And when they are, we win. It's just that simple. If you have a place where the people who work for you are proud to say they work there, they're proud to wear your swag, they're proud for the world to see that they are affiliated with the place they work, that's a really, really good start. And if you have the kind of business where people are proud to be seen carrying a doggy bag from your restaurant, and proud to be seen in your restaurant, that's a really, really good start. So I'm just really proud that over the course of my career, which now goes back to 1984, was the first time I had a job in this industry, that our industry is one that people seek and that people say, I want to do that. I'm proud to do that. This is the kind of entrepreneurial pursuit that can actually, in addition to making people feel good, and in addition to sharing something that I really love, that can actually make money and that can create a career path for a lot more people. Now, I've learned over these years that our industry has a lot of work still to do. I think that we've proven that we are a fantastic first job for many, many people. And I think that we've also proven that it's a great way to learn leadership skills. However, I think we still have a lot of work to do to level the playing field between the people who work in the kitchen and the people who work in the dining room, and amongst people from diverse backgrounds. And I think that compensation models that we have all grown up with have some work to do, because they have provided different kind of opportunities for different kinds of people. And during this past year, when we've all learned so much because we couldn't be in business. In fact, when I think back in the very, very early days, which was exactly a year ago from right now, when we didn't know anything about COVID, we didn't know how long it was going to last, we didn't know what mortality rates would be like. We lost the very, very strength that as an industry we had, for example, during 9/11. Because right after 9/11, we actually had in New York City what our city needed the most, which was to provide a safe place for people to gather together and to heal and to be around the table and to learn to feel better. This time around, we couldn't do that. We couldn't do all the things that we're so good at. So what did it do? It tapped into so many of the things that our industry actually does at its best, but in different ways than we expected. It tapped into our curiosity. It tapped into our entrepreneurial spirit. It tapped into our humility. None of us knew what was going to happen tomorrow. And for those of us who thought we did, we were proven wrong every single time. It tapped into our resilience. It tapped into our willingness to change. It tapped into our sense of ambiguity and complexity. And in many, many ways, it reminded me that our industry is a lot like driving a car. On one hand, that car better be safe and it better be reliable, and all the indicators better work. You better have plenty of gas in the tank. You better have plenty of windshield fluid. And for better or for worse, you better have a good GPS system that is able to shift with every changing condition out there. But with all of the reliability, you also had to be willing to shift almost as if you were sailing a boat rather than driving a car, because you just never knew which way the wind was going to blow. And at a time when we were all unable to welcome people to work safely in our businesses, and or even when we could find safe protocol to invite people to come back to work, it was incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to welcome anybody into our establishments, never mind even for outdoor dining. So this past year has accelerated the need to change, and it's accelerated so many of the things that our industry either turned its back on or was unwelcoming of, whether it was using tech to give people food, because nobody stopped eating food during the pandemic, but they wanted to eat food in a place that felt safe. And that tended to be either in their home or in their car, or maybe for contact-free pickup outside the restaurants. And that's what we had to learn how to do. We learned how to ship food across the country. No fine dining restaurant was ever talking about that kind of thing. No fast casual restaurant was ever talking about that kind of thing. We all had to learn how to do it. And now we're learning new ways where we can safely bring people together to come to work and to return to our restaurants. And we're going to do that as well. Through the whole thing, and one of your students mentioned this, hope has been the underlying currency which has made this all work. And I've always said, and I've always believed, that hope is truly the root of the word hospitality. When we perform an act of hospitality, we hope that what we do and what we extend, when we extend an arm or we extend a hug, that the person on the receiving end is going to return the gesture by shaking our hand back or hugging us back. Both also things that we've been told we can't do over this past year. I couldn't agree more with what Peter Greenberg said earlier in his talk, which is that as effective as a Zoom call like this has been as a replacement for communication, it's not the real deal. It's not the whole deal. Zoom is a two-dimensional experience. We can see one another, we can hear one another, but we can't smell, and we can't taste, and we can't feel, and there's no spontaneity whatsoever. And I believe that there is going to be an amazing craving to return to the human contact that real live people do with real live people. I think it's going to take a while, as Peter said, for people to return to international travel, but it's going to happen. Over this past year, and I'm not a macroeconomist, but I do have friends who sell things that work in your home. And they have said that this past year has been like Christmas almost every single week. But how many more washing machines can you buy? And how many new couches can you buy? And how many new mixers and ice cream makers and bread machines can you possibly buy? People have not only a pent-up desire to be with people again, but they're also going to find that the money that they've saved by not traveling, by not going to restaurants, by not having experiences, but rather buying things, that there is going to be a massive, massive return to what we do. The thing I want to end with today is this. If you're somebody who's been planning and working and saving and studying to get into the hospitality industry, I could imagine where you might say to yourself, what horrible timing on my part. Look how many places have actually gone out of business over this past year. And on one hand, you're kind of right. It's been a really, really tough time to be in business. If you've been in business, as we have for this past year, you've spent an enormous amount of your mind and your heart trying to figure out how to get to the other side of this. And in so doing, you've had to make some incredibly tough decisions. Many of them have had to do with laying off people. Many of those decisions have had to do with trying to renegotiate the underlying cost structure of a lease, which was based on a reality that no longer exists. If you, like me, have a business that's in a city like New York, for example, but it could be the case in Boston or Chicago or really any big city, where your lease was based on an expectation of density of people living in that city, people going to work in that city, people traveling for tourism or for business. And all of a sudden, that reality no longer exists, and yet you're left with the underlying lease. That's a pretty tough spot to be in. But let's say you're somebody who's just about to get into the business for the first time. Whether you're opening your own place, you're going to work at a new restaurant, you are going to be in the best position that anyone has ever been in our industry. Why? Well, first of all, people love restaurants. People love going out to eat more than they ever have, and they need to do it more than they ever have. Secondly, there's another side to what's been so painful. There are fewer competitors out there, and fewer competitors means that you're going to have access to more talent. We've had a real shortage of really wonderful hospitality talent over the past 5 years, but now we finally have a chance to work with champions. Secondly, landlords are going to come to their senses. They have to. There's no way that tomorrow's restaurant is going to have the same overpriced underlying cost structure that yesterday's leases had. Thirdly, because of all the restaurants that have unfortunately gone out of business, there is going to be an amazing number of opportunities for those of you who are looking for a new space in a great location, maybe already built out. So this is probably as good of a time to get into the business as there has ever been. And for those like me and like many, many others who have found a way with most of our restaurants, in my case, not all of them, but with most of our restaurants to get to the other side of this really, really tough year with some solvency, we just couldn't be more excited about getting back. And that is all about hope. This past week, as an example, we have opened 4 of our restaurants for the first time in 1 year, with 50% dining indoors and outdoor dining. And we think that we can make a go of that. And mostly the hope that is provided when human beings are seen dining. And if you're somebody who moved out of New York City for the year, you come back and all of a sudden it looks like your city again, and smells like your city again, and feels like your city again. There's really good reason to come back. And soon enough, there's going to be reason for people to come travel. And we just could not feel more hopeful and more excited. So I'm going to end where I started with the most heartfelt thank you. You've made this an amazing experience for me that I will never forget. I hope I can get a hold of that incredible video so that I can show my kids and my family that what I do actually has made an impact on some other amazing people. And meanwhile, I just want to say a big, big thank you to all of you. Thank you so much.
Danny, thank you so much. I think that video is just a small representation of the impact that you've had on so many young people and so many professionals and on our industry in general. So thank you for doing that. And I'm just so happy that you did not go with your family's choice. And I hope they have come around to accepting you, because we are all so excited and happy that you decided to join our industry and not go to law school, which the other thing I also want to briefly mention, and you also expressed your unhappiness that you're on Zoom and you would rather be here. And of course, we would much rather you be here in person. So here's an invitation. We would love to get you back on campus. I think the excitement that we have now will be just so much multifold when people actually see you on campus. So I hope you will come and visit us in future.
I hope so too. Thank you very much.
Oh, of course. So let me, and I think I'm very excited that you have this optimism for the future that people are going to come out and eat. And so, but we're going to come to that for a second. I want to go back to this that you just mentioned. You're opening 4 restaurants at one time. And with the brief conversation we had before you had said that that is an opportunity, that it gives you a lot of advantages to starting over. So can you talk a little bit about how you're starting over, how you're hiring, and what are the changes you're making in your hiring practices and your vision for how your restaurants are staffed?
Well, thank you. There's so many changes that we've been thinking about and making over this past year. Let's go back. Even a year ago, when we closed our restaurants on March 13th of 2020, so we're talking almost exactly a year. The one thing that you could get everybody to agree with, or at least I didn't get any disagreement, was when I would say, okay, no one knows when this is going to end, or how bad it's going to get, or how many people we're going to lose. But do you believe this is the thing that's going to end the world? And 100% of the people said, no, this won't be the thing that ends the world. So I would say, great. If that's the case, then the only thing we can control right now is who were we during the time that we couldn't be in business? What did we learn? What did we change? How did we behave? What values did we bring to our decision making? And we tried to find as many silver linings as we could. And I don't say that in the way of being Pollyanna, but what can we actually impact? And what we all agreed with on my team was we will never again in our careers have an opportunity to take our boat out of the water and put it into dry dock for an entire year and inspect every inch of the underbelly and fix things that are broken. Because let's face it, our industry, year after year after year, really for the last 15 years or so, the margins of profitability have been getting tougher and tougher. And a good part of the reason is that our industry was based on 2 expectations that stopped being the case. And one was that real estate was inexpensive enough that you could charge enough money to make money and cover that fixed cost, and that talent was inexpensive enough. And some of which had to do with a construct that goes all the way back to the Civil War called tipping, where restaurants didn't pay for half of the talent in the restaurant. That was a cost passed on to the guest. And as minimum wage has gone up year after year after year, and as rent has gone up year after year after year, and I might add, as more and more people have gone into the restaurant business, which is a good thing if you're a consumer, that has placed an additional downward pressure on your ability to price things. And so the restaurant industry, as we saw it going into this past year, was almost akin to someone in their 90s with an underlying health condition going into COVID. They might have faced their mortality anyway, and all it took was COVID to kind of knock things out. And that's kind of how our industry was in many, many ways. And so we took this year to ask ourselves, what are the things that we can decide to change the entire way we do business? And one of the many, many things we saw was the compensation model. And we also saw a lot of the racial injustice that our industry faced. And a lot of that truly got brought to the fore late last spring with the murder of George Floyd, following Breonna Taylor and others. And it forced us to take a really, really hard look at what our industry could do to truly fulfill its mission of hospitality. Because if we say that hospitality is something that exists when the other person feels like you're on their side, and when people are made to feel like they belong, and then you look and you say, our industry has made, and I don't talk about our whole industry, I talk about my own company, that we've made some people feel like they belong more than others. That's not good enough. And so that is reason in and of itself for us to say, how can we use our industry to actually lead this entire country in terms of making headway and truly fulfill our greatest promise? So every single thing we've done this year, some of it has been just looking at many of the things we've done just because we've always done them and questioned those things. Sometimes it's had to do with how many sommeliers we need in a restaurant, or how we take reservations, or how we can use technology to actually not just to save money, but how can we use tech to advance touch, which is hospitality. And it's truly been a year that, while incredibly painful and incredibly challenging, has been one that I know many of us will look back on and say, that was the year that we truly got things right. Finally, what I would say is this. A year ago, early March, Union Square Hospitality Group, I'm not talking about Shake Shack, which is a separate company, but we had about 2,400 employees at Union Square Hospitality Group. On this very day, a year ago, we made the incredibly tough decision to cut back to 150 employees. There was just never a tougher day in any of our careers. We made some corresponding decisions at that point. We created a 501c3 immediately called the Hugs Fund, found ways through auctions with our guests, through some of us giving our whole compensation back to it. We raised $2 million and granted that out to our team while we were waiting for the government to act on the CARES package at that point. It was not a good experience, but we learned the power of staying in contact with people, of having constant communication with people who had been laid off, because we still considered people to be members of our family. And while today we still are only back up to about 450 employees, we know that we will build back up. And furthermore, we know that we can accelerate all of our diversity and inclusion goals, which had been from 2025, we can accelerate them to 2021, because we will never have an opportunity again to blend all of the wisdom and experience that we've gotten over all these many years, but to get it right this time, and to repaint a picture the way that picture should be, and to hold ourselves accountable for that. For the first time ever, we have published on our Union Square Hospitality Group website all of our goals and exactly where we are week to week in terms of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And not many restaurants are doing that, but I believe every restaurant can do that.
Danny, I think I'm really inspired, and I think everyone listening here is going to be inspired by this this closure of our industry that you've turned into such a huge, big positive. We are predicated on inviting people to dine with us, to stay with us. And like exactly you said, if there was a segment of the population that was not feeling that, I think that was very, very wrong. And I think I applaud you for making all the efforts. And I think everyone kind of knew that you were way ahead. And I think this is, again, staking out a leadership position. And I thank you and I applaud you for this. So in terms of when you do restaffing, and you also mentioned in your talk that that we were finding that you were having trouble filling out all the positions before pandemic. And during this pandemic now, a lot of people have left our industry, those who are working in it. And to some extent, we have a name that, okay, there are no jobs, there is no future. And so how are you trying to convey this to people, and how are you trying to recruit the best talent back into the industry? Because unless we have good talent, we are not going to be able to achieve the ambitious agenda that you have outlined.
Well, we're living that very question right now, and it's too soon for me to give you any type of concrete answer, but I will once again lead with hope. I believe that the investment we made by staying in really close touch with people during this past year, providing people not just with relief via our Hugs Fund, but also lots and lots of information. We basically asked ourselves this question: how can we reconcile being an employee first company and laying off 95% of our employees? That was something that cost me about 4 consecutive nights of sleep late last March. And the only way I could answer it myself was to say, unless we're around when this thing is over, we can't be an employer, period. And the only way to become solvent or remain solvent is to make these tough decisions. And then furthermore, okay, how can we actually distinguish ourselves by being an effective unemployer? And I know that sounds like an absolutely crazy thing to say, but we really tried to do that. And so by providing training for people to get their resume in line, by providing a really robust jobs board for like-hearted companies, like-spirited companies who in fact had the wind at their back during COVID, and many companies did, and helping our team members to get jobs elsewhere. That was one way we did it. By providing emotional health resources for people. That was one way we did it. But truly, what we're noticing right now is that in this last year, we've tried hard to invest in the one thing we could invest in, and that's caring. And I believe that that investment is paying off right now with the 4 restaurants that have reopened over the past 2 weeks, and the ones that we're now planning for over the next handful of months. People are answering the call, and not just alumni from our business, but also people from other businesses that maybe have either gone out of business or maybe didn't stay in touch with their employees just as much. And the challenge, but one that I'm just as excited about as ever, is that we always made things a little bit tougher for ourselves, because we didn't just look for the best cook. We looked for the best cook, saying that's only 49% of what we're looking for. The other 51% is, what are the emotional skills whereby this cook has a high HQ, high hospitality quotient. That was already limiting the field quite a bit, but that's fine. We learned how to do that. Now we're adding another dimension, and that is that we are absolutely committed to making sure that our restaurants, from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, look like the community in which they're doing business. And we're going to be resolute. And every single member of our team knows that they cannot settle. They can't settle for someone who, in addition to being a great cook, is not a great culture carrier and doesn't help to balance out the team. And we're doing it because it's good business. You actually make better decisions on a day-to-day basis, and you then attract a much more diverse clientele when you do this the right way. And I just want to be very clear about something, Dean. If I thought we had been doing such a great job of this historically, this wouldn't be such a big topic for me right now. I want to be as humble and as honest as I can, and to say that the big transition we're undergoing as an organization is going from being a non-racist organization to being an actively anti-racist organization. And the difference is as stark as night and day.
Thank you, Danny. I think even at Boston University, we are taking a very, very strong stand against racism. And I think everyone needs to understand that it's not just you have to be exactly like you said. You cannot just say that I'm not a racist, but you've got to be an anti-racist. And all of us have responsibility to sort of take action on this issue. So thank you, Danny, and I hope that people who are listening and people who are trying to staff and who are trying to rebuild their organizations, they get this message that you have to do it in a very thoughtful manner, just like you are saying. And if people are having trouble finding employees or just finding the right kinds of employing, there is a lot of back end work that has to happen, and you're doing it. So thank you for that.
And we can. I want to leave you the message. We can do this. This is very doable, and we can do it right now, and that's the exciting part.
And we need to do it as well. So thank you for that. So I want to switch a little bit. There are a lot of questions on the chat as well about just the economics. And you mentioned one of the things, the real estate expenses and so forth. A lot of the model of fine dining is built on you are coming into a space and being welcomed, and there is staff that is serving you on your tables. And so there is an inherent cost structure, which includes the real estate. But when you do a takeaway, you are now just using the kitchen and of course the reputation of the brand, but you're not using, no one is coming and sitting down. And so they're paying the same cost structure. And I think part of that has been used by these virtual and ghost kitchens. So how do you envision, so first of all, what is the future of these virtual ghost kitchen? And that is a question that people are asking. And second, how can restaurants work to provide takeaway food that doesn't include all the cost structure that is inherent in a restaurant?
I really believe that the takeaway portion that we've all had to learn how to do in this past year is something that will remain. I think it's going to be the icing on the cake as opposed to the whole cake. I do believe that people are going to want to return to restaurants. I had the opportunity a few weeks ago to visit Florida for 4 days. It was the first time I had taken an airline flight in a year, and that was a very safe experience. What I saw in Florida blew my mind. On the very first night I was there, I dined outside safely at a restaurant, but I had to check in with the maitre d' indoors at that restaurant. And what I saw, having lived in New York for the last year, was almost from another planet. It was the loudest, most crowded restaurant scene I had experienced, almost as if there was no COVID, and everybody at the bar was cheek to jowl, having cocktails. The only masks I saw in the entire restaurant were being worn by the people who worked in the restaurant. And after I got over my shock at what I was hearing and seeing and smelling, I actually felt really, really good because I saw the future of dining in New York, because I could see in the dining room, I've been in this business long enough to know that at least 25% of the people in that dining room were New Yorkers, and they were showing what they want to do and what they cannot wait to do. And I really, really believe that as soon as we have enough of the population vaccinated, and we're moving really, really well and quickly on that, and as soon as someone has that experience once and they get it out of their system, and I did that with one of our restaurants this week. I dined indoors at one of our restaurants, believe it or not, for the first time this week, and I survived. I've been vaccinated. I felt great, but it was a weird feeling the first time I did it. And next time I do it, it's going to be easier. And this actually reminds me a little bit of after 9/11, when every airport got metal detectors. There were some people who felt safe immediately, and there were some people for whom it took a handful of flights or a handful of months to start to feel better. It's going to happen. And when it happens, restaurants are going to be packed. But now, guess what? In addition to packed restaurants, we're going to be able to take that underlying rent structure that's been very challenging and add 20% more by dining on the sidewalk, which fine dining restaurants either were unwilling or unable to do. We're also going to be able to add that extra 10% of having food going out the door with a courier. And it's no longer such a weird feeling to be having a date in a fine dining restaurant and see somebody come in with the red canvas bag, picking up food to take to somebody else. That used to be like a cold shower on your date when you saw the delivery person come into the restaurant. Guess what? Everybody's used to that right now. So I really think that um, it's going to continue. Now, in terms of ghost kitchens, that's not something that I've ever seen as being a big growth area. I think it's a fancy word for commissary. And the reason that any business has a commissary is that there's excess demand over and above what their own kitchen, also known as their manufacturing plant, can produce. Well, in this last year, every kitchen has been a ghost kitchen. There's no kitchen I've been aware of that doesn't have excess capacity, so much so that we've been in an era for the past 8 months or so that has given rise to virtual brands where people are establishing a brand that you can sell out of your existing restaurant kitchen with their online digital marketplace, which doesn't exactly leave extra room to be paying somebody else for kitchen space over and beyond what you need. We'll see how that goes. I'm not anti-ghost kitchen. I just don't think that we're quite at a point where we need them.
We've all seen pictures and videos of Florida and its back bars and restaurants and beaches. And, one part of me just, when I look at that and I cringe and I say, oh my God, and maybe for 1 year I've been so isolated, and I think everyone feels the same. You look at that in horror and say, there is a pandemic going on. But again, you're absolutely right that there is a spirit of optimism in our industry that when things get better, people will come back right into the restaurants. There is one more segment of restaurants, one more aspect of restaurants that is not talked about a whole lot. And BU alumna Lisa Flores asked this question. The event segment of the restaurant industry has also been greatly impacted and not really acknowledged publicly. What do you see for the future of restaurant events?
That's a great question. It's something that we contemplate. Our largest business is one that maybe you've never heard of because it's mostly a business-to-business company called Union Square Events. And that's a business that serves food in ballparks. We serve food in first class on Delta. We do big galas and events in New York City, and we serve food in offices. So think about all 4 of those categories. They just went poof, they just went away. And here's what we're seeing there. The one good thing about being in the event business this minute is that we're getting a window, a really good window into where the world is going, because most events are planned way in advance. And the number of weddings that got postponed is going to explode in the year 2022. A lot of people, no one did them last year. There were a lot of people who just didn't know what month to month was going to happen. And they planned them and then planned and canceled or postponed. And then a lot of people in 2021 said, we just don't want the uncertainty. So 2022 weddings are going crazy right now. We've been having conversations with airlines right now who see the world coming back and who want what we have. We've been having conversations, certainly via Shake Shack, that serves in airports, where airports are growing, and train stations are coming back right now. We've been hearing from lots and lots of offices who expect that their workforce is coming back and who are beginning to have conversations with us to contract us, not just for serving food to their workers, but also for the whole hospitality experience of working in an office place. And so I do believe that this will come back. I don't think 2021 is going to be our most robust year by any case. By the way, one other category is serving food at universities, when I'm sure you know exactly how that's been. How many of your students have been taking in-person classes? Probably a fraction of what it will be next year. So we're starting to see those seeds planted, and we think the crops will probably bloom by 2022 in a pretty good way.
So Danny, I think if this event generated a whole lot of questions and I don't have time to get to all of them, but I will throw 3 rapid fire questions if you can just sort of in a rapid fire format, answer some of them so I can ask them. We have our graduate student, Marut Rawal, who is asking, what is the impact of $15 minimum wage for the F&B sector, which already has such thin profit margins?
Well, I think personally, I think it's a good thing. I understand why our industry is desperately afraid of it, because how do you reconcile narrowing margins and yet now you're going to throw another wrench in the works? However, let's remember one thing. If it's something that is national, or even if it's something that's in your state alone, and I could make an argument that the $15 minimum wage should be regional and not national, because different regions have different cost structures. So for example, a $15 minimum wage in a state like Texas or Georgia or Alabama, where the cost of living is lower, is very different than a $15 minimum wage in New York City, where the cost of living is quite a bit higher. And so I could imagine that you peg it to some type of cost structure wherever that happens to be, regionally, state by state. But the one thing I would say is this, is that if our industry continues to look at people as a disposable resource, and we don't understand that if you lift all boats, it's actually much, much better for your business in the long run. And if my rate happens to be $15 in New York City, am I happy that I have one more cost challenge? Of course not. But if all of my competitive restaurants are in that same boat, then everybody's got the same kind of pricing pressure. The consumers will not only get used to it, but more consumers in our community will have more money. And that is a good thing for life. And so I'm actually for it. However, I would probably advocate pegging it to some type of regional evening out.
So I have one last question for you that I'm going to ask. I have just tons of questions that people have asked. Some time ago, you had changed the tipping in your restaurants, and all of us standing on the sidelines were applauding. But now you've had a lot of experience with this. Pandemic has also changed a lot of things. So can you give us some sense of where you stand on that now, some perspective on tipping versus no tipping, or pooling of tippings in a different manner?
I've learned so much. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 2015, I saw something that I had never seen before, which is that not only was it becoming incredibly hard in New York City to attract good cooks, but when we would attract a good cook, they would potentially leave the restaurant to get a 25-cent an hour raise at someone else's restaurant, or a 50-cent an hour raise. Furthermore, while one day I came to one of our restaurants and I was incredibly proud at the outset to learn that half of our servers were graduates of culinary schools, I then said, wait, the reason that that's the case is they can't afford to be cooks. And I said, that's not right. Every single year I had been in business, tipped employees were making more money because a tip is a multiplier of the menu price, which just kept going up. And back of the house workers, who in New York at least may not legally share tips, were pretty much staying put. And I said, much as you heard me talk about with respect to racial equity, that it's not a hospitality business if we're only on the side of half of our employees. And we had to do something about that widening wage gap. And so I said, well, if I can't change the tipping system, I'm just going to do away with it. And we made a valiant effort for 5 years, converting almost all of our businesses to something that we called hospitality included. And it became a very, very challenging thing to make the math work, because if you wanted to keep your prices in line with what customers were willing to pay, and you wanted to raise the back of the house 20%, which was our goal, and you wanted to have benefits to all of your employees, like a really, really good family leave policy, like a retirement plan. We did all of these things. And you wanted to try to keep your formerly tipped employees as whole as possible to where they were. Something had to give because we could never quite charge enough to do all the things we wanted to do. The guests actually came along with it pretty much. They loved the notion that they could just sign their check and leave. They loved not having to buy their coat back from the coat checker in the middle of winter. Nobody likes that. But finally, when we started to get back in business this past summer with some outdoor dining, something amazing happened, which was, number one, it was tougher to invite our servers to come back because they were understandably concerned about the safety of coming back to work. And then furthermore, when they did come back to work, the New York diner wanted to leave really, really generous tips to say thank you to these frontline workers for doing it. And we were all of a sudden in a very strange position, which was asking our servers not to accept this gratitude and telling our guests they may not give it. Neither one of which was a very good feeling. And so we took that. One of the many things we did this past year was to say, okay, is tipping in and of itself the problem? And I came to the conclusion that while the philosophy behind why we had gone to a hospitality included model was something I felt very strongly about, that tipping in and of itself is not the issue. The real issue is the inability legally to share tips amongst all people. That the person who cooked your food shouldn't make less money than the person who took the plate to the table. That hospitality is a team sport, that everybody should share in that. So we did two things. We did three things. We eliminated hospitality included. We eliminated eliminating tipping. We moved back to a tipping model for our dining room, but we made a choice that in so doing, we would do two other things. Number one is we would create a revenue share program for our kitchen because that's legal. So every night, the kitchen is also incented to serve more food, and that when we do serve more food, they do well as well. So now the guests are happy, they can tip. The front of the house are happy, they can get their tips. And the kitchen, this has been a very, very good recruiting tool for the kitchen. But the next thing we're doing is every ounce of advocacy we can with our state, because believe it or not, state legislatures can overrule the federal standard for labor. And if in New York State, we can do what is done in many states on the West Coast, which is that the guests can come into the restaurant and leave gratitude, and that gratitude can be shared legally amongst everybody. That's where I want to see this thing move.
Danny, I want to thank you for coming and accepting. I think your thoughtful leadership, I think, is proof that you are truly an icon and deserving of this award. And it is just so inspirational for all of us to hear your thoughts and to hear your leadership style and your forward thinking. I'm truly humbled, and I really appreciate you coming on here. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Professor Lance. And my sincere thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Dean of Nature.
Danny, we're actually at the end of time, but I did want to get one or two just more personal questions in there, just because people have been asking, and I want to get this out there. So if you can spare another 2 minutes, 3 minutes, that would be greatly appreciated. This year, you've been home with your family. Who's been doing the cooking? Have you had, who cooks at home, or where'd you bring in from?
Well, during the time that we had, when we were all in quarantine on lockdown, it's the first time in my life, including when I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, that I had 78 consecutive family meals with everybody at the table at home. It had never, ever happened in my life. And I'm just fortunate that everyone in our family loves to cook. In fact, our oldest daughter is now in the ice cream business. She has a place called Cafe Pana in New York. And we would all contribute. We would take turns. If you cooked, someone else did the dishes. So that's why I always volunteered to cook. But we all cook, and one of our kids became a bread baker, which is a common story during the quarantine. That's happened everywhere. But good stuff.
Yeah, it's been, I know, I can appreciate that. Having everyone at home has actually been such one of the silver linings of this, is having everyone together at the dinner table. Real quick, I know things have changed this year. Who knows which restaurants are coming back, but any of your favorite, what are some of the favorite restaurants around the globe or in the country that you always appreciated? I know I just spent this week rereading Setting the Table for my third time, I think. So I did get a sense of where you've traveled, but any sort of top restaurants that you hope to get to, maybe?
That's such a tough question. I think the thing that I've missed the most is just travel, and I'm not trying to make a cop out to your question, but I was listening earlier, as I said, to Peter Greenberg speaking, and when I take a business trip, it's not for the purpose of signing a contract with somebody. We can now do that with DocuSign. It's really all the stuff that happens with that trip, which is getting to go to a restaurant, going to a market, learning something new about a different culture, smelling how the air in San Francisco smells different than the air in New York City. There's something that, and you generally, when I do travel, especially to a city I love, I try to combine returning to a place there that I know and love, and always try something new that I've never been to before. And I just can't wait to get that back. I will tell you, in general, if I could wave a magic wand and automatically be somewhere that I've missed the most, it would be Italy. I'm always happy when I'm in Italy, breathing that air, eating that food, meeting the people, hearing the language, and it's hard to find a bad meal when you're there too.
I can imagine. Well, we're going to end it on that note, because just to inspire us to look forward to the day when we will do this travel sometime soon together is a great way to conclude. So Danny, thank you. Thank you for being here with us, with our students, with our faculty, with our alums. Congratulations on the Icon Award. And on behalf of Dean of NASIA and my fellow faculty members and the staff and the students, I want to thank you, Danny, and everyone who joined us today to hear from Peter and from Danny, to join us with our Leadership Summit. We also did mention that we have a new concentration in restaurant management and experiences. And I think, Danny, you made us feel good that the direction we're going in as a school to inspire young people is the right one. So thank you for that too. I do want to just quote something you shared on your Instagram last week when Union Square Cafe opened. And that's how I'll close right now. You so wonderfully shared so many more dishes to serve, glasses to fill, and memories to be made. I don't know anyone who could have said that better. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us today. Share the hospitality and see you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.